But seriously, I find it significant.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
Hello, greetings, and welcome. Welcome to the Stereo 999 YouTube channel. I am your host, the artist formerly known as Stereo Steve. And you might remember that 2 weeks ago, there was no video on Saturday. And I tried to fabricate a little spooky, mysterious explanation. But really what happened was I just had too much material and I was just procrastinating doing the editing, and I just kind of let it sit in the can. And now's the time. 2 weeks ago, what was on my mind was that meme with Kamala Harris holding up albums. Most of the time when they do some kind of meme like that, the album that they're originally holding is pretty lightweight. But the album that she's actually holding in the picture is Let My Children Hear Music by Charles Mingus, which is a pretty significant album. And I started out that I was going to talk about that and then go into some other stuff. And then I changed my mind and decided I was going to do kind of a what I got Charles Mingus retrospective. And I filmed a bunch of that. And then when I was doing my opening monologue, I kind of got on a little bit of a political soapbox. This week I'm going to go through all that footage and make a coherent 20-minute video out of it. And I hope you enjoy.
What I got might be a lot, or it might not, but it's what I got.
So yeah, Charles Mingus, bassist, composer, band leader, outspoken personality, genius. And these are the records that I have by Charles Mingus. And one that my friend had that I was really into back in the day was Mingus Live at the Bohemia, which had the song Jump Monk, which was a tribute to Thelonious Monk. And that song is a total earworm. Just wonderful. This Prestige twofer contains that album as the first disc, but it's a different mix than the version that I heard. That was like the OJC reissue. These came out in the early 70s after Prestige label was bought by Fantasy out of Berkeley. Okay, this is another interesting one. Charles Mingus presents Charles Mingus. Again, a live album. He instructs the audience to not applaud. And this is one of the last ones with Eric Dolphy in the band, because he did rejoin later on. But the Mingus albums that have Eric Dolphy are the most experimental. He gets into his long titles. All the things you could be by now if Sigmund Freud's wife was your mother. And this is the reissue on the Barnaby label, which is very cool because it has this Salvador Dali inspired graphic. This is another one of his kind of conceptual masterpieces. This is again a reissue because it has different cover art. Pithecanthropus erectus. Actually, a jazz tone poem. It depicts musically my conception of the modern counterpart of the first man to stand erect, how he was considering himself the first to ascend from all fours, pounding his chest and preaching his superiority over the animals. Dun, 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 dun. Of course, here's the one everybody usually starts with, Mingus Ahum from 1959. And this is part of the Columbia Jazz Masterpieces. The reissues from the late 80s, which were digitally mastered, because this was the same time that they were released on compact disc. Little promo stamp here. But yeah, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, covered by Jeff Beck, tribute to the great Lester Young, which on this album, Mingus on Impulse, was titled Theme for Lester Young. And this one also has the great Hora Decubitus, Bedtime. Let's see. This appears to be an OG on the Impulse. It is, yeah. Here's what's interesting. Better Get It in Your Soul, and then it's retitled Better Get Hit in Your Soul. All right. This one is kind of a gray area. I don't know, might be bootleg, might not. On the Affinity label, it's live 1960 at the Antibes Jazz Festival. Another great band lineup. And this is another reissue. This is another one that people lean towards as one of his masterpieces. The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. This is like a symphony, this album. And this is part of that Impulse reissue series, again from around the same time as the Columbia, the late 80s Impulse reissues, where they altered the cover art. They changed everything to this font for some reason. But nice sounding pressing. It's got all the liner notes on the inside sleeve. I believe the original was a gatefold. And now we get to the one that Kamala bought. Let My Children Hear Music. And I've seen some people comment, yeah, this is not one of his major works like Black Saint and the Sinner Lady or Mingus which is not true. This is later. I mean, it's from the early 70s. But Charles Mingus himself said that it was the best album he'd ever made at the time. Very large group, very ambitious compositions. And again, with the long titles. The shoes of the fisherman's wife are some jive-ass slippers. Don't be afraid. The clown's afraid too. And, 10 Melody Fugue, and Hobo Ho, which has a really catchy bass line that just builds up into layers and layers of horns on top of it. That's the one I used to play on the radio all the time. The Chill of Death. This gets very, very dark. It's actually a poem that he wrote about dying. And yeah. But this is a pretty intense album. Very ambitious compositions. It's like he finally got, enough budget to do this epic work. It also includes the provocative essay, which the essay has some of like what the kids these days would call hot takes. He's talking about a lot of stuff, talking about how jazz is America's classical music and how the caliber of musicianship is a lot higher in this music than people assume. He makes kind of a hot take about the Beatles, about how most of their music he can hear the Tin Pan Alley old style songwriters, which is accurate because that's what Paul McCartney's dad raised him on. And the punchline to the title, "Let my children hear music. Let them hear live music, not noise." But then it's like, my children. You can let your children listen to whatever they want.
Jazz is the music of anti-fascism. I remember watching the Ken Burns jazz documentary, and there was a part where they were talking about in the late 30s in Germany when they were starting to ban certain art forms that the regime felt threatened by. And one of the first things on the chopping block was American jazz music. And the great piano player Earl Hines was asked, "Why is that?" And his answer was, "Jazz expresses the hope of a free people. It is based on individuality, which is contrary to the very fundamentals of Nazism."
Oh no, you can't leave yet. You gotta have a nice cup of tea with me.
Sometimes I wish I'd been at that convention in San Francisco. I mean, I wish I'd been a delegate. I really do, because I would have fought, you know? And I wouldn't have worried so much about party unity, because if you unite behind a man you don't believe in, it's a lie. I tell you, those people who got control of that convention, who are they? I mean, when the head of the Ku Klux Klan, when all these weird groups come out in favor of the candidate of my party, either they're not Republicans or I'm not.
Notice the way he uses the word weird.
Okay, so here we are with another edition of Compact Disc Corner, where I talk about the compact discs in the corner. That's right. And I figure I should upload my Charles Mingus collection into the computer, since that's what we're talking about on this video. And I just got a stack, and I'm just going to go through them. Start out with this. This is the Ken Burns Jazz Collection of Charles Mingus. And it goes from about Haitian fight song down to the shoes of the fisherman's wife are some jive-ass slippers from Let My Children Hear Music. Of course, these compilations came out to coincide with the Ken Burns Jazz TV specials. So this is around the same time as this is Mingus Moves, recorded 1973, and it was re-released on the 32 Jazz label in 1999. These are pretty cool because they have these plastic cases that aren't really clear plastic. They're like black with like attached labels, which is cool. Kind of reminds me of 8-track tapes. But anyway, I had a vinyl copy of this from a thrift store that was like totally wrecked. And so I was stoked to find this CD really cheap. And it originally came out on Atlantic. This is Fables of Faubus. And this is actually I wrote some notes, but this is actually a bootleg of the 1964 European concert that was eventually officially released. This was like the return of Eric Dolphy to the group near the end of Dolphy's life. Also the great Jackie Byard on piano. Very long, stretched out versions of his classic tunes on this. And these turn up cheap because they're not exactly official releases. More from this tour, and this is legit. This is the Mingus Town Hall concert. Again, with the similar lineup. And this is the April 4th, 1964 show. And 2 long pieces dedicated to Eric Dolphy. And again, Eric Dolphy stayed in Europe and passed away not too long after the European tour with Mingus in 64. Crazy, stretched out, improvised madness on this album. Okay, here's an earlier album on the Bethlehem label, East Coasting, by Charlie Mingus. It's got a alternate take. And this has the great Bill Evans on piano. And yeah, it was recorded in 1957. The CD release is from 2000. This is Mingus Revisited on the MRC label, with some great players on here. Again, Dolphy, Yusef Lateef, Joe Farrell, Marcus Belgrave. Big horn section, Roland Hanna or Paul Bley on piano. Of course, Danny Richmond, who's usually his drummer. But yeah, this album was released under the title Pre-Bird in 1960 and then retitled Mingus Revisited in 1965. Another Bethlehem release, a modern jazz symposium of music and poetry. That's a cool cover. But this is another one that incorporates spoken word, kind of orchestrated suites. Yeah, this is a really cool one. It's a high fidelity recording with stereo sound techniques. Another Bethlehem album, The Jazz Experiments of Charlie Mingus. I like this one a lot. It's got Teo Macero on saxophone, who you might recognize as the producer on a lot of classic Miles Davis albums. And yeah, Thrice Upon a Theme. Yeah, just great stuff. And again, this is really early. It's 1954. All right. And last but not least, Money Jungle. Duke Ellington on piano, Charlie Mingus on bass, Max Roach on drums. No more, no less than three of the greatest of all time improvising. Okay then, that's my video. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and peace.